Assalamualaikum warahmatullah wabarakatuh. I hope you are fine and your family also fine and healthy. Actually, by and large, there are regulations in our daily life. I deliver only online class, even in my university in Japan. And many places are closed. And unfortunately, such regulation continued. I wish the protection and help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today's topic is still Islam in East Asian context. East Asia mainly means China, Japan, and Korea in this course. And today's lecture, I would like to discuss some concepts such as Darul Islam, Darul Harb, or Dar Ahad, Dar Sulf, Dar Adawa, and some other issues. Why do I need to discuss such concepts? Because we discuss on Islam in East Asian context, and we need to make it clear what kind of country or society do we live in? Many things are not so clear in China or in Japan, in Korea. Because the classical fiqh of mazhabs developed in the Middle East, mainly in the Middle East, under the Muslim rule. Dawla Abbasi and Usmaniya or other Muslim ruled territories in Maghreb, in Egypt, in Iraq, in East Asia. There are differences of environment or differences of social context, differences of religions for humans. And at first, we need to understand the states of East Asia in many aspects. We already discussed. It is the better way, or it is the clever way to understand the society where we live in. The religions and worldviews in East Asia. Actually, it is not the main topic today. I intend to discuss on these religions and their worldviews next class. But briefly, I can say the dominant mainstream religions in East Asia are Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. And there are some others also, such as Shinto in Japan. Actually, it takes time to explain what do these religions teach. But it is clear China, Japan, Korea, they are different from Egypt or Iraq or Syria because the majority of the people believe such religions. These religions are not dominant in the Middle East, or very rare, or they were not even known in the age of the Prophet and the Sahaba. There are no mentions on these religions in Quran and Hadith. Probably these religions and their believers are not Ahlul Kitab. They are not Christians. They are not Jews. So the Muslims in East Asia, they needed to think, how should we interact with them? These Buddhists, these Taoists, they are not Ahlul Kitab, and there are no description in Quran and Hadith. Even for the Muslims in Southeast Asia, they have the same issue. These religions and their believers can be seen in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand, in Myanmar. Especially in modern age, the population of Chinese increased. They believe these religions, and interactions with believers of these religions became important issue. There were many questions and fatwas on relationship with these religions in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. There were many questions such as the believers of Taoism came to my next house and they built an idol statue of their gods. So how can we interact with them? Or believers of Confucianism, they want to build their temples in their town. So is it permissible to sell land to them? Or do we have to reject? Actually, it's very political and even sensitive today. But such questions were very frequent, even in Southeast Asia, especially in the modern age. I said these three religions are dominant in East Asia. But Christianity is not small group, especially in Korea. I mean South Korea. North Korea is a communist country and religions are not permitted in North Korea. Basically, there are no religious institutions in North Korea. But South Korea, they are very active. And the largest group is Christianity, except those say we have no religious beliefs. But the sum of Protestants and Catholics are bigger than Buddhists in South Korea. Christianity is not so old. They increased in the early 20th century, but they became a very large group in South Korea. And even in China, Christianity is increasing rapidly. Even today, Christianity in China is not so well known because many of them are going underground. The Communist Party of China does not like the development of Christianity in China, but they are really strong underground. And it is said even 10% of the Chinese embraced Christianity. 10% means more than 100 million. So it is very interesting. Why are the Chinese prefer Christianity so much today? And I have never heard the majority of Chinese embrace Islam in such large scale. I do not know, but Christianity is very growing in China, even in Korea. In Japan, it's a bit different. In the Japanese history, there were some periods of Christianity growth, including the 16th century. But once Christianity developed in Japan, the Japanese government never permit the increase of the Christians. All of them were terminated repeatedly, but Christians increased again and again. So the Christianity have potentiality in East Asia, even in Japan. In Japan, they cannot be so big group, but in Korea and China, they are already very big. This is not the topic of this course, but it is interesting. Chinese and Koreans embraced Christianity in very large scale, and we do not know the reason. The topic of this lecture is Islam in East Asian context. And at first, I am questioning who are these people? I mean, the majority of the Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans. These Confucianist, Buddhist, and Taoist, or Shintoist in Japan. If they are Christians, they may be Ahlul Kitab. They are Christians, but the majority of East Asians are believers of these religions. Many people say they worship idols. They are kuffar. They are people of shirk. Maybe they are not monotheists, or they do not believe in Allah. Right. Confucianist or Buddhist or Taoist. But is it their sins? I mean, are they sinners, or do they have responsibility? I mean, if they have never heard of Allah, Quran, Prophet Muhammad, can we say they make sins because they worship idols. If they have no knowledge on Islam and Allah, can we say they will go to hell? They will go to hell or Jahannam because they never worship Allah. There was an episode in Japan in the 16th century. In this period, the Europeans came to Japan first time. Portuguese, Spanish, and Catholic missionaries came to Japan. Jesuits and other missionary groups came to Japan to propagate Christianity. They told Japanese people, believe Christian God or Jesus. Without believing Jesus, you cannot go to the heaven. It is the only way of salvation. Believe Jesus. Then the Japanese asked in the 16th century, you say, the missionaries, if we do not believe Jesus, we will go to hell. So how about our parents, grandparents, our ancestors? They do not believe Jesus. The missionaries from Europe answered, of course, they are in the hell. They go to hell because they did not believe Jesus. Then the Japanese answered, oh, our ancestors are in the hell, so we must go to the hell because it is the place of our ancestors. We do not need Christianity. It is our duty to go to the same place with our parents, grandparents. For the Muslims, it may sound funny or strange, but it is a big question, a big issue for the many converts in East Asia. This Christian missionary, their way of propagation was not so clever. They thought they can threat. You will go to the hell if you do not believe Jesus. But the value system of the Japanese society, it is not the priority. Going to the hell or going to the heaven, it's not the priority. But the place of the ancestor, it is the priority. So, threatening the Japanese people was not so successful. But we cannot laugh these Christian missionaries. I saw many such Muslims in Japan in these days. Many Pakistanis or other Muslims from foreign countries, they want to persuade the Japanese, believe in Allah or you will go to the hell like your ancestors. Of course, the Japanese do not feel happy to hear such propagations. Nobody can be persuaded by such threatening. I saw many such way of dawa. They say it is for dawa, but there should be appropriate approach to the local society in local context. I am discussing on the majority people in East Asia. There is a concept of Ahlul Fatra. Fatra, the nature of the humans. Basically, this concept means people of the interval. The interval means the period without knowledge on revelation, or a period without the prophet. There are some different opinions on this category of Ahlul Fatra and the period of the interval. Basically, after the Prophet Muhammad, the humans have knowledge on Islam. But in many parts in the world, the people did not have access to knowledge of Islam. Even in the 20th century, including the Japanese, even in the 20th century, most of the Japanese never heard of Islam, Allah, and Prophet Muhammad. They never heard. So, what is their sin? What is their mistake? They just did not have a chance to know on Islam. Actually, we cannot so simply say the Japanese or Koreans or the Chinese are Ahlul Fatra. Especially the Chinese, at least they have Muslim neighbors. In China, the Muslim community has history of more than 1,000 years. China is different. Islam has long history in China. Anyway, those without knowledge have less responsibility. Those without Rasul or Nabi would not be punished. Actually, we do not know really the Japanese or the Koreans are Ahlul Fatwa or not. And today, in the age of the globalization, the situation is different. Everybody can access to the knowledge by internet. Anyway, only the guidance, the hidayah of Allah make the humans accepted to Jannah and Allah alone. But we should be careful. We should not decide so simply. These people are kuffar. These people commit shirk. Then they must go to Jahannam. It's not necessarily so simple, and there may be possibility of salvation for the humans. Anyway, Allah decides. And secondly, I continue to discuss what kind of society or country do we live? China, Japan, and Korea. If we think simply, these countries are Darul Harb. Darul Islam should have Muslim ruler or the governance in line with Sharia. It is difficult to say the governance and the legal system in these East Asian countries are in line with Sharia. But simple dichotomy of Darul Islam and Darul Harb is not necessarily easy in the contemporary world. Such discussion began from the Muslim scholars in Europe. And even in the Muslim countries. It is problematic to say all the non-Muslim countries are Darul Harb. United States of America, United Kingdom, France, Russia, China, India. It's a bit problematic to call them Darul Harb. Many scholars today say these countries are Darul Ahad. or Darul Sulf. The countries with treaty or diplomatic relationship, reconciliation, because the Muslim countries have diplomatic relationship, they are not Darul Harb, they are Darul Ahad or Darul Sulf. Probably such opinion is the majority. Many scholars, including Yusuf Qaradawi, basically think European countries are Darul Ahad. Some minor opinions say Europe or European countries are Dar Abdawa. France, UK, Germany, their place or a sphere for Dawa. They are not Darul Harb or Darul Islam. They are Darul Dawa. This article discussions on this issue. In the 1970s, the Muslim scholars, those who were born in Europe, discussed, such as Khurram Murad, discussed European countries are Dar ad-Dawa. Other scholars, such as Tariq Ramadan, had the same opinion. In the 1970s, many Muslims migrated to Europe, and the Muslim countries are not necessarily good place for ibadah and dawah. In the countries like Syria or even in Egypt, there are many regulations for the activities of the Muslims. Even mosques were under the watch by police in many Muslim countries. In the 1970s and 80s, European countries were relatively better, even comparing to Arab countries. In some aspects, there were freedom and spaces for activities of Muslim movements. Therefore, these Muslims, especially those who were born in Europe, discussed Europe should be Dar ad-Dawa. The center of Dawa can be established in Europe. Dawa for non-Muslim Europeans and Muslims in the Muslim countries, because in many Muslim countries, there were not freedom of Dawa. This view was a bit opportunistic because later the environment in Europe became more difficult for the Muslims in the 1990s and especially after 2001. Today in Europe, there are many regulations in France, in Germany. It's not necessarily so free space today. So how about East Asia, China, Japan, and South Korea? Actually, you may know, these three countries are not the same in politics. In Japan and South Korea, there may be freedom, relatively, but to live as minority is not so easy. And we cannot be so opportunistic and call Japan or China, South Korea, Dawa. It's not so easy. And today we have challenges in China, even in Japan and South Korea. Now, I do not have enough time to discuss on the contemporary challenges, and I will continue to discuss in the next classes. One of the main challenges is how to embed in the society. I mean, Islam is religion of foreigners in Japan and South Korea. In China, it is a bit different. Islam has a root history of more than 1,000 years. Islam and the Muslims are part of China, its history and Chinese civilization, but they are not mainstream, and they can be regulated or even be eliminated. The Muslims have challenges in China. In Japan and Korea, Islam is something from outside, and the majority of the Japanese or Koreans do not think Islam is a part of Japan or a part of Korea. The Chinese Muslims have long history of ijtihad to work to overcome these challenges. basically, they have intellectual efforts of many centuries to coexist with the majority Chinese religions, or efforts to harmonize Chinese religions and Islam. Such efforts were necessary to survive as minority. And such efforts are main topic of next class. Let me answer to your questions from now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. It's very interesting when you say that the Japanese would rather go to hell to meet the ancestors than to become Christian. I remember once you told me concept of Tawhid almost not there in the Japanese community. So they understand religion something on mystical Sufism, but nothing to do with understanding of one God. So okay, we have I think question from Brother Abdul Kalam. What do you think of strategies of other Muslim countries about Southeast Asia? I mean, from other Muslim countries, what they can do to Japan, Korea, and China?
Strategies on what?
I think must be about doing da'wah, helping the new Muslim in Japan, in Korea. What can we do from outside?
If you mean Muslim countries, the Muslim majority countries, there are only 3 in Southeast Asia: Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei. And Malaysia and Indonesia, they may have different approaches, strategies. As you know, it's not a simple story, and you know, it changed from time to time. But as you know, the majority of Chinese want to keep their religions or their ancestors' religions: Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism. It is maybe natural. It's not normal to change religions in their generation. And it is not easy. And through the human histories, very limited individuals were successful to make real change. Individuals like Prophet, they made great change. For the normal people, their approach or dawah should be step by step. It is natural, even if it takes time, decades or even centuries.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. We have two good questions, one from Brother Nuruddin and the other from Sister Jamalia. From Brother Nuruddin, Prof, please explain that Islam can be the fastest growing religion in Europe. Would the same trend also occur in Asia? Is globalization an opportunity as well as a challenge for the Islamic world?
This is also very big topic. And in Europe, I think the main factor is immigrants and refugees, mainly from the Middle East and Africa. Of course, it's not so simple. Just migration does not change demographics, because succession of tradition from generation to generation is not easy. The Muslims migrated to Europe. Then their next generation may forget their parents' religion. It can happen. But in Europe, the second generation or the third generation became even stronger in Islamic practice and knowledge. This is the growing of Islam in Europe. East Asia, there are many differences in context. For example, in Japan, the largest group of immigrants is the Chinese. It is natural. China is a neighbor. And the Middle East is very far. There are very few Syrian refugees or Afghan refugees in Japan, because Japan is very far from Middle East. The largest group is Indonesians, but they are smaller comparing to the Chinese. So it's very geographical factor, and globalization. Globalization, it's a big, we can discuss on many aspects. Well, the Muslims can move, and I am not so sure, actually. The Chinese also move, and the Indians also. And actually, the Muslims may take advantages, but the others also.
Okay. Question by Sister Jamalia. I would like to ask about Islamophobia in Japan. Just a general opinion from Prof. I met a young Japanese expert in Islamic knowledge. His study about Islam civilization just amazing. To my surprise, he is not even Muslim.
But even in Europe, the majority of the researchers on Islam are not Muslims. In UK or US or Germany, it's same. It was the topic of the last lecture. Japan imported knowledge from Europe after Meiji Restoration. Everything. Natural science, social science, human sciences. The Europeans have faculty of literature. So important. The faculty of literature has Orientalist studies, or even they have department of Islamic studies. So the Japanese university also has just a copy. It's not more than that. And Islamophobia, it's not so serious. The main reason is they never met Muslims. The Japanese have no problem concerning Islam and the Muslims. The Muslims are not in their sight, in their daily life. So they do not have necessity to have Islamophobia. To say simply, they are not interested in, basically.
Okay, bro. We take the last one from Brother Rakib. What is the impact of USA military presence in South Korea on Christianity growth? Is it not the reason why Christianity is so big in number in South Korea because of the military from the US?
It's one factor, but it's not the biggest factor, because Christianity increased under the Japanese colonial period. And of course, Christianity became popular because Christianity was from the United States. And they expected America will liberate Koreans from the Japanese. So they contacted to Americans. And if it is possible, they asked the missionaries to arrange study in USA. So most of the leaders in South Korea studied in America. They converted, then they studied in American universities. So yes, it's an impact of the United States, but not only the military.
Okay, Prof. There is one question from Mr. Pazlat on Uyghur. I'll forward it to you. Maybe next week we can explain more about the problem with the Chinese, inshallah. Thank you so much, Prof. We'll see you next week, inshallah. Can you give us a brief about next week's class?
Next class, the topic is the worldview. Of course, it's relevant to religions in China, Japan, South Korea. To understand worldviews is very crucial for core existence. It is the main content of the next lecture.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Thank you, everyone. See you next week, inshallah.
Thank you.
Salaam.